Shout out to Melissa and Shakedown. Thanks so much for subscribing to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for regular uploads and your chance to be included in shoutouts for future videos.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'll be showing you how I pre-make the ratios I use for my salt solution and also my sugar syrup solution. So I make these all in advance now. I just find them so much easier to incorporate them into your soap recipe without having to, dissolve them into the water before adding the lye. And it can be a tedious process, and especially the salt as well, I find. Doesn't matter what salt you use, it can not dissolve fully sometimes, and you might get little chunks of salt in your actual soap bars as you use them. So this is the solution. So you can see there's a little bit of sediment on the bottom, but then it's not coarse or harsh, it's actually like a powder. So what I do is I just shake it out and then it just like fully incorporates again. And then I, get my lye container and then I put the required amount of salt I need in the recipe, and then I make up the rest just with distilled water. So depending on how much salt you need, the amount you add of this varies, but this is a 3-to-1 ratio or a 75% distilled water to 25% salt ratio, and that's a 3-to-1 as well. And for the sugar syrup, it's actually 2-to-1, meaning 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. So this has actually got more sugar than water in here. It's quite thick as well, whereas the salt solution, there's actually more water than salt in here. And the reason why that I found 3-to-1 to be the perfect sweet spot is I find it fully dissolves. So that's why I go with those 2 ratios for those. So I worked on a spreadsheet as well with all the formulas. So I will provide that in the link in the description as well. And it actually takes into consideration how much salt and water is in here in a ratio and a percentage, and it tells you how much pink salt solution you need for the amount of actual salt that you. Right, so as you know, in my most popular recipe, and the recipe that I make quite a lot, it's a 70% olive and 30% coconut oil. And what I like to do with that recipe is I like to add 12 grams of pink salt per kilo of oil. And also I was doing 3% sugar when I was dissolving it in the actual water before I added the lye, but I've actually dropped it down to 1%. So I will show you exactly how I calculate these as well. So if I need 12 grams of salt, I actually have to weigh out 48 grams of this solution. And if I need, obviously per kilo, my recipe, which I usually use 25% water to oil ratio, so 250 grams of distilled water. What I'll do is I'll weigh 48 grams of the solution, and I'll make up the rest by adding the rest in just plain distilled water. And same with the sugar solution. So if I need like 15 grams per kilo, I'll have to add 20 grams of the solution. And what I do with the sugar syrup now, I actually just add it to the oils. I don't add it in the lye water at all. I add it straight to the coconut oil and all the oils together when I melt them slowly on my hot plate. I just find it such a huge time saver, and there's just no funny bits and there's no overheating of the lye solution or any of that. So I just find it really, really good. So percentage wise, we will, I use these like pretty handy sauce bottles as you see me use, and as you've seen in all my videos as well, and ones I've just shown you with pre-made salt solution and sugar syrup. Actually, it's a little bit small. What we'll do is we'll grab a larger funnel just so it doesn't go everywhere. Right, so we're going to tear that. So 3-to-1 ratio. So basically it's times 3 of the pink salt amount, and it'll make sense once you see Excel spreadsheet, and just refer to that anytime in future that you want it. It just takes all the guesswork and calculating of how much actual salt you need to make up, this, or how much actually salt you need to put in your soap recipe. Salt is just an amazing additive in soap. It promotes longevity in your bar and also speeds up the cutting time. And as you've seen, most of my bars I actually cut between 3 and 5 hours. And I really, really like, I will always use salt in my recipes. That's just a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer, like you should be using salt and sugar in your recipes. And if you don't have access to sodium lactate, that's actually okay. That's not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker, or it's not gonna, you can still create long-lasting soap. You just up the salt amount. The only reason why I use 1.2 with sodium lactate because I use both. But if you were to use one, like just the pink salt on its own, you can do 1.5 to 2% of that in a cocoa olive recipe, and you adjust how much obviously you need depending how much hard oils are in your actual recipe. So we're going to weigh out 200 grams of pink salt. So we'll just weigh it out there. And I like using pink salt. I always get asked why I use pink salt and raw sugar. Is because they are very minimally processed, and I like that there are no fillers, and they are very, very pure in nature. So, and of course I make natural soap, so what better way to carry that philosophy over into my soap making when using additives, even if it's just salt and sugar. And then I'm going to add 600 grams of distilled water. To weigh out 600 grams of distilled water. I keep my distilled water in the fridge because I find that when I'm making up the rice solution, after I mix everything and whatnot, I find that the overall temperature of the rice solution is actually considerably cooler, usually by 10 or 15 degrees, which is pretty good. And also not adding the sugar anymore. Yeah, it's a good 15 degrees off. Where do I put the lid? So there we go, there's the lid, and literally just click that on. That's why I like these bottles too, because you can click them on. And these are 1 litre bottles, and they are from Big W here in Australia. And literally all you do is just shake the damn thing. That's how easy it is. So this is obviously, I've shaken that before, and after I've shaken, I just leave it in the fridge and it's fine. And I've just recently bought another one of these to have 2. And also I've got another one in the fridge as well, so I've got 2 sugar syrups as well. And I'll do the same thing with my titanium dioxide. And I learned this trick from Keely, over from Sloane Shea. Hi Keely. She told me to do 1 part sodium, 1 part titanium dioxide to 1.25 parts of water, and then I put a marble in it, and then I put it in the fridge, so it's great. But I generally don't do more than 200 grams of titanium dioxide at a time, because I found even with a marble, it can clunk up a lot if there's too much on the bottom, and it's really hard to shake. So that's a nice tip. So thanks Kiwi. And also the sugar syrup idea, 2-to-1 ratio I got from good old Ellie from Ellie's Everyday. Hello Ellie, maybe you're watching, I don't know. So just give it a good shake, and that's it. Literally that's how I make my salt solution. It's so simple, but it just cuts out having to get out my salt bucket and weighing out every time. I know usually 4 kilo slab I work with, so I do 48 times 4, and then I just make the rest up, distilled what I need for the recipe. It's just so easy, and as this sits in the fridge and sits for a while, the salt just fully dissolves, and I don't have any problems with scratchiness or undissolved salt left in my soap recipe. So that was the easiest part. So for the sugar, how I prepare my sugar syrup, I actually just get the pot that you see me make soap in on the hot plate, and then I literally just weigh up 2 to 1. So 2 parts sugar to 1 part water, or 1,000 grams sugar to half a kilo or 500 grams of water, and then I melt it on really low heat, not too high, just around 50 degrees. It takes about an hour to 2 hours to fully dissolve, and it's actually quite liquid when it's hot, but when you turn it off and it starts to come back down to room temperature, and especially when you put it in the fridge, it goes really thick. So if you make yours and you think, oh, it's not thick enough, don't add any more sugar. It's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's purely just, you've got to wait for it to come back down to room temperature, or even, being cold in the fridge, 4 or 5 degrees, for it to really thicken up. So that's actually the really easy part. So this morning I was actually sitting on my computer because I'm actually unwell with COVID again. Yay! COVID got me again. Woohoo! This will be the 3rd time now I've gotten it over the last few years. But it wasn't too bad. Just I got a bit of a congestion because I usually have hay fever sometimes, like in summer or in spring. So no, it's not a surprise that it attacked my sinus areas. And it always gives me a really big migraine as well when I have COVID. But still, that's okay. I was feeling a little restless. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to work on the end of the month video and get it out of the way as well. And then that way I can rest nice and easy tonight. Right, so this is the easy part. Now, the difficult part, well, semi-difficult, was me getting the formulas right in Excel, but I managed to. I have to, it'll probably make sense when I show you myself, when we go to the Excel spreadsheet, and I'll show you what multiplier I had to come with. And the multiplier is literally 2 to 1 and 3 to 1. So those are the multipliers. So for me to get the correct value of how much we need, depending on how much net sugar or net salt, meaning when we take away the water, and that's in these, how much salt and sugar we want in our actual soap recipe. So to work out the net, I had to work out the value or the ratio, 3 to 1 or 2 to 1 or whatever it was, depending on which one we're using, and for us to get the correct end result. So there's a part on the spreadsheet where it's marked in red where you can change the values, but don't change the values for anything else because it'll affect the accuracy of net water and net sugar and salt, right? So let's stop the yakking over here and let's continue our yakking when we go to the Excel spreadsheet.
Right, so here we are at the salt and sugar calculator that I created in Excel, and it's a really handy way of knowing exactly how much salt and sugar you are wanting in your recipe. And I've actually stated down here only values in red should be changed, so then you don't mess up the way I've set up all the formulas here, because they work with the actual ratios that I've set up. Like for example, for the sugar and syrup, it's 2 to 1 ratio, and the salt is 3 to 1. So here, sugar batch size, and this does the percentages of the 500, and then the amount of sugar and distilled water you require. And if you want to make obviously a larger batch, then let's say you want to make 1,000 grams or 1 kilo worth, these values here change. So for 1 kilo batch, you need 667 raw sugar, 333 of distilled water. You can just play around as you see, like you can, when you change the values, it changes how much grams are required here. And then here the soap batch size. So let's say we want, it's a kilo of oil in our soap batch. We want, say, 10 grams, 1% of that. And usually, normally you add 10 grams in the water. You dissolve that before adding the lye. But in this case, we're not doing that. We're adding it to the oils. And we want 10 grams. So total, you'll need 15 grams. If you want more actual sugar in your recipe, some people do 2% or 3%. It will show you exactly how much gross sugar syrup you need. So let's say we want 3%, we want 30 grams of sugar, which is net grams sugar, and then net water is 15, and then total weigh out is 45 grams, and then we'll have the 30 grams of sugar. So we'll change that back to 1% because I've been doing 1% and I've been really happy with that. I was doing 3% in the past, but I just found as I reduced it to 1%, didn't really notice much of a difference in terms of lather. So I found 1% to be nice. And the same deal here for our lovely salt solution, which is probably where most people have issues with, because the number one complaint I've heard over the years of people messaging me, or comments on YouTube or social media, or emails, is the salt never fully dissolves before they add the lye in. So they might get little chunks on the bottom, and it might actually appear in the bar of soap after you cut it and you go to use it after it's cured, and you might scratch yourself a little. So this way you just avoid that from happening. It can happen with sugar, but not as much, because sugar's it readily dissolves quite quickly. And after you mix, even if it's not fully dissolved in the water, by the time saponification happens and all that chemistry and chemical reactions that happen over the 72-hour period, the sugar tends to mostly dissolve, and so you won't really have that issue with sugar, but you will definitely can come across that with salt. And I've even come across that even with my years of soap making. Sometimes there are just a tiny bit of salt chunks, or just like a little grain of salt, and then when I go to wash my body, I can actually just scratch myself with it. So this has avoided this from happening completely. So same deal with the sugar syrup. So let's say we're going to make 800 gram salt solution, and then here are the percentages, and then it tells you the values, which is what I actually did in the video. I did 800 grams worth, so I weighed out 200 grams of pink salt, and I added the distilled water. You can easily go up. Let's say you want to make a larger batch, 1500 grams, or even 2 kilos, 2000 grams. It here changes the values automatically. So we'll change it back to 800. And then of course, here is the magic that happens. So for example, let's say we want 20 grams of salt in our 1000 gram batch, oil batch of our soap recipe. It tells you the net salt and the net water, just like the sugar, and it tells you we need 80 grams of the gross salt solution to get the 20 grams of salt, and obviously the 60 grams of water. And of course, if you change this, we want 30 grams, the values change, and if you just want 10 grams, the values change again. And of course, it changes also with the soap batch size. So let's say we've got 2 kilos of oil in our soap recipe. This will tell you exactly how much gross you need, which is 80 grams. And of course, if you change that, the values change up to 160 for 2%. And then of course, 3% is 240 gram salt solution. So for example, we'll just change it back to 1000 because it just makes it easier. And 2%. So let's say we have 250 grams of water in our recipe, because we're doing 25% water to oil, or let's say 30 grams, you just deduct 80 from 300, because obviously say 30% water to oil for a 1 kilo batch is 300 grams of distilled water. So then we'll only have to add 220 grams of distilled water, because we already added 80 grams of the salt solution. So that's how I do mine, and I've just been a real time saver and just a quick bang bang bang. And I thought I'd just put this together in a Excel spreadsheet, just so it's much easier for you to know exactly how much gross sugar syrup and salt solution to weigh in your soap recipe. So this Excel spreadsheet is available to download from our website. You can follow the link in the description box, and it'll take you to the content creation page on our website, and just scroll down and you'll see a download section to direct links, and just click that and enjoy the spreadsheet. And let me know how you go with the spreadsheet, and if you find this video useful, and if you decide to use these methods in future, let me know in the comments section also how you find it, and if you just find it just to be an efficient way of incorporating these additives in your soap recipe, and just an overall time saver. Alright, so let me know, and I shall see you next time I create a video. So, as you know, I will share before I go. I was doing 4 videos a month originally, and then I went down to 2 videos a month. Now I'm going to be aiming just for 1 video a month, so it'll be the first Saturday of every month. Sometimes I might do 2 or 3, just depending on, you know, how I feel and how busy I am and stuff. But I'm just going to be aiming for the 1 video a month, which is the first Saturday of every month, and I just find that to be a lot more manageable. Because you know, of course, myself, I'm just a one-man show, and I edit everything and I record everything myself. So doing the 1 a month really helps me out. And thank you very much for watching, and I hope you find this video useful. And until next time, take care and happy soaping.